Hey, what's going on, you guys? Welcome back to Cultivation Corner. We are in the midst of season 2, so we just want to thank you so much for tuning back in. I am here with Richie from Growfos.
Hey.
And Janae from Janae Simone. And you know me, I'm Steve from I Live Plants. We got a special guest today on today's program. We got Garen from Plant Keeper.
Hey, everyone.
Yeah.
We are going to ask Garen some questions about what brought him here to Plant Keeper. This is actually in Dallas, Texas, in Oak Cliff, Texas. So if you're in the area, please make your way to Plant Keeper. Trust me when I tell you, you won't be disappointed. Can you see the background?
I can see the background. It is literally
Beautiful.
Dallas's hidden
Plan
jungle.
for an hour visit.
Yes,
minimum, bare
Yes.
minimum.
Just to walk around and take it all in. You know what I'm saying? But you guys, I'm going to shoot it off to Richie. I'm so glad you're here.
So what I was gonna just say is, obviously, Garen, we are so excited that you are part of this plant podcast. Cultivation Corner, and just being the manager at Plant Keeper and stuff. You see a lot of plants. You see a ton of plants. You see a lot of people, right? Today's episode, we are just going to talk about, are plant trends really worth the hype? Because I know you have a lot of opinions on just plant trends, substrates, the types of people that grow plants, all of that. So I just wanted to open the discussion with, definitely introduce yourself to the cultivators, let them know a little bit of background about you and your role in Plant Keeper.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So I tell people all the time when they ask, they're like, "Oh, what did you go to college for? What was this?" And I tell people all the time, I joined the Army to get out of East Texas. And how does that translate to this? Well, no one knows that they can do this when they grow up. This isn't something that you're going to see where people are like, "Oh yeah, I'm a tropical plant salesman." It was like, so it's kind of a weird jump. When I got out of the Army, I said to myself, I'm never going to do a job that I don't ever want to do again.
Yeah.
And for me, that journey probably started, I've always been into plants, but about 10 years ago, my wife and I bought our house here in Bishop Arts. On Instagram, I'm the Bishop Arts Garden for that reason. And we built a butterfly and wildlife habitat.
Yeah.
And that's when I went nuts. 100%. And then this was just another extension of that. And coming here, the learning curve for this many amount of plants, we're somewhere around the area between 2,000 and 3,000 plants in here right now.
Wow.
Now,
That's a lot.
yeah, now that being said, we got to remember there's a whole tray of succulents over there that's like 60.
Right.
Yeah.
So they can't all be specimen beautiful pieces and things. I've probably got 500 Phalaenopsis orchids on the property. It's just, these are all reblooms actually behind us. Every single one is a rebloom.
Amazing.
And we allow people to bring those back in so we can rebloom them, which is a strange thing.
I'm bringing mine
Yeah,
back.
oh, yeah.
My variegated one.
I just don't want you throwing them away.
Yeah.
That's kind of the idea. So we give a $5 store credit towards a new one. Now,
Oh.
yeah. Now I can't guarantee the colors, obviously.
Yeah.
But more what we're trying to do is, what I don't want you doing is spending $50 on a plant that you're not going to love. Something that you're not going to get an experience out of. You're not going to learn anything. So we just try to make it easy to build collections in that process and give people the opportunity. And I say it all the time, we're trying to build your success and build your confidence. I mean, Richie and Steven have been hearing this same speech for years. at
5
this
years,
point.
go count.
Yeah, Richie I've known for 5 years. Oh, I'm sorry,
You almost 4.
yeah, and you're coming up on 4, yeah.
And Janae just recently met.
Yeah,
Yeah.
just new.
Recent.
So she hasn't heard the speech 20 times. But I say a lot of the same stuff over and over again because at the end of the day, plants are actually easier than we give them credit for. And, there's definitely a black and white when it comes to it, but a lot of this stuff is gray area.
Yeah.
Water quality issues, the type of sunlight you're getting, new windows, old windows, is there a vent? A lot of my customers end up, when their lease ends up, they will find an apartment with much better light.
That's what I just
Yeah.
did.
Must say you did that.
Literally has a whole room now. I helped him move his stuff. And so there's a lot of different things that go into it. The idea is, how can you service and help every single customer, client, guest, whatever you want to call them, when you're doing as much as we're doing, selling retail, selling wholesale, working with designers, doing plant rentals, doing corporate, commercial, residential maintenance. There's a lot of information that you've got to take in
Yeah.
and try to compound that and break it down as fast as you can to help people take care of plants. Which for me, if you haven't noticed, as I'm long-winded, is one
We
of the
love
harder
it.
parts, you know, but I can wax poetic 4 hours about the sun or whatever you want to talk about. I mean, just talking about this podcast with Stephen and Richie, I told him, I said, listen, if the sun's not out, my heater's going to be blowing.
Yeah.
I was like, we're right by the highway. If the wind picks up, this becomes a very scary building very quickly.
Yeah.
I was like, any greenhouse is going to be that way. It takes just a certain type of lifestyle, is what I call it,
Yeah.
and passion to, in the summer, it'll be 115 degrees in here.
Yeah.
You know, you got to be a crazy person to want to do this. And we can make you crazy. It's not that hard.
Yeah.
And that's the whole objective.
I mean, there's a lot of crazy plant people anyway.
Oh,
and
plant
just-
people, yeah.
Yeah.
Plant people anyway, but you know what's really exciting to have you on the Plant Podcast, Garen, is number one, we've had long-standing relationships with you and this
Right.
actual nursery, you know, and a lot of people in the Dallas market, they don't even really know about it. I think oftentimes people think it's just a strictly wholesaler, but what I've gotten out of just meeting you and visiting this plant nursery, or just, I would just say it's just plant heaven, is I love the fact that you're not necessarily always in it to just push and sell plants.
Correct.
You are not going to allow somebody to go in here and sell them, I don't know, a calathea, and you already know that
Sure.
that's not going to work out. You're going to vet out, you know, the consumer on what is going to work for them. And I think that's the
Experience
difference.
level and things
Well, I think
of
that's
that
the difference
nature.
level where some nurseries they want to sell you whatever
Oh,
they
yeah.
want just to make that quick money. And I think, you know, especially as a consumer or somebody who collects plants, we want to have people that are genuinely invested in that plant journey. And I know, Stephen, you were going to mention something of that nature.
Yeah, well, I could tell you. So, I moved to Bishop Arts about 4 years ago, and I used to drive past this place all the time. And I was just like, you know what? And I mentioned this before. I was in somewhat of a dark place, transition, pandemic, you know, that whole thing. And I was like, I need something to keep me grounded. So I stopped in here, just out the shot of a dark, and met Garen. And Garen has been so influential in schooling me and giving me more knowledge about plants. I was a first timer. Okay,
Yeah.
so when I came into the
Knew
shop,
nothing.
knew nothing.
Not a thing.
Nada.
So I came into this shop, and you know, Garen could smell the milk breath, the plant milk breath on.
Oh, you a
on me because I was a
baby.
baby. I wasn't, you know, just came out
He
the.
came in and said, my friend said that I need something in my southwest corner, my wealth corner. And I was like, did they tell you to get a money
Do you
tree?
remember that?
And he was like, yeah, wait, hold on. How did you know that? And I was like, because that's the wealth corner.
The wealth corner.
I was kind of feng shui in my apartment, you know what I mean? But you know, when I met you, it was this whole thing about don't get too crazy,
Yeah.
too fast, okay? You know, reel it in, and you were very influential in that. Let me ask you this question: when it comes to customers and sort of like what their wants are, because we always talk about wants and needs and everything like that. When you have to dial them back to what they actually need for their space as opposed to what they want, how does that conversation happen?
So you got to remember, not everybody's going to be good at this, okay?
Yeah.
You have to be able to have hard conversations with people. And my thing that I say is what you want and what you need are not usually the same thing. But what we're here to do is to bridge that gap and make it possible. But we've got to look through that stuff. So most people are willing to take, you know, any type of info that they can get. You definitely do have a smaller customer group that is going to, you know, non-believers, cynics, skeptics, anyone that's learned more than they could have known on YouTube and BuzzFeed, and I read all these articles. So you've got to be able to sense that person kind of out and see what they're doing. And this happens too with customers that hype fiend something. You know, like, oh, I went skiing once and I had to have $6,000 worth of equipment instead of just renting it. You don't know if you're ever going to ski again.
Yeah.
So I'm notorious for, I'll let you pull 12 plants, a whole cart full of plants, then ask you which 3 you'd like to buy today.
Wow.
And then if one of them is not on the list that I wanted to sell you, we're not going to sell it to you. But we're going to explain to you why we don't think you're there yet. And this is a pretty standard conversation here about needing to reel people in. I understand it is exciting. When I started here, my plant collection went from no plants to 150 in a matter of a year, because we've always got something left over here that I'm just like, well, let's give it a shot. I've tried a lot of this stuff in the ground to see if it will come back over the winter, but you've got to do all those processes to be able to speak with confidence. And that's why the customers are going to listen to you. It doesn't matter what type of customer they are. They're going to listen to you and believe you and learn from you if you can speak from a place of confidence. And then in here as well, as we can see, I've got a lot of examples. So I can show you this pristine, perfect one, and then I can show you one I'm having a hard time with.
That's real right there.
And I
Yeah,
love that
it is.
transparency, because I just feel like maybe, you know, so certain business owners, they always want to show you the positive side of plants. But, you know, it's kind of like, I've never had children, but it's kind of like some people, they want children or they want a pet or something of that nature. There is more work to it. And oftentimes, especially like with social media and being so prevalent, we only see the good. And that's why it's so...
Yeah.
I don't know, Jenny.
The
like,
clout chase is real, kids. Yeah, the clout chase
It's
is
like
real.
True.
I mean, Jenny, because I know this, you're like more, you just been introduced to Plant Keeper. Like, what were your initial thoughts when you walked in here? Like, what did you think this building was? Like, and then when you walked in,
Well, yeah, when I walked in, I know I was just like, I couldn't speak.
it's that
Because, yeah. And then it just keeps on going and going. When I thought I was done, Steve and Rich were like, no, like, there's more.
corner.
And there's like also an outside place. And yeah, it was a lot. It was overwhelming, but like overwhelming in a good way.
the dopamine.
And yeah, no, exactly. So I really like that about here.
Yeah, we can tell by your eyes if you're supposed to be here or not.
oh,
As crazy as it sounds, you know, most people walk through the door. I mean, people will come through that door and you won't even get to talk to them before their phone's out and they're making a video. Then I've got people that, as hard as this is to believe, will walk straight to my front desk. And I know that person right there, if I've never seen them in my life, they are probably, I'm not for them right now. And this could be anything. This could be sod. This could be just they're looking for rosemary bush, because we do specifically tropical, subtropical plants for interior use, or at least a shaded patio. But we got to remember, everything's got to come in. And that's what I describe to what I call the children of summer, who their first year, they'll be like, well, it grows great outside. It does really well. And I'm like, yeah, but at Thanksgiving, we're going to have an issue, traditionally speaking.
Have freezing temperatures.
Okay.
Yes. Now, we got lucky this year, I'd say. I think we made it till Christmas, around there. But yeah, we do, I mean, like you said, an outside, people are like, well, yours are outside. Well, Bird of Paradise that I end up using to rent out to HGTV or something like that. Yeah. The only reason that those are able to rent out for a pool shot is because it took me 3 years
to grow it.
to train this thing. The first year, they fried to death.
Yeah.
Wow.
I mean, it was unbelievable. So then I have to regrow these plants, but we're training them, and it's possible to do. But we got to remember, like, it's not a quick thing. Plants are not quick. A year is not a long time. It takes 3 years, when I tell people, to understand water and the sun. And even then, I still don't know all the answers. And it's just working through that process. The number one thing we ask people here is where you live. And people think that's funny. Like, they don't want to answer it. And I'm like, you just tell me your cross street. I need to know where you live.
Yeah.
This is a water quality question. If you live in certain places, your water, you might need to use distilled water. A lot of people that are going to listen to this have killed tons of calatheas, marantas, gopertias, probably a Geogonantha silatus.
Oh, Lord.
Right, everyone's killed. I killed a whole tray of them in a day. African violets, that's something I really don't even carry because they can be so finicky.
With the water?
Yeah, with the heat.
Oh, okay.
I'll watch them die at 90 degrees. It was, I mean, I've seen some insane stuff. And in a greenhouse, it is hard to control all of these. Like, the weather in Texas is insane.
It really is.
Yeah.
It really
Like,
is.
it's a beautiful day today, but I was truly concerned with the 16-mile-an-hour wind.
Right.
That I was like gonna wake up this morning and be like, no, we're off today.
Yeah,
Thanks.
yeah.
I was like, so, you know, there's lots of little things that go on, but having that to show the customers, once again, goes back to the validity and shows that customer that, like you were saying, oh, you know, you go to a plant shop, people bring me stuff all the time and they're like, I don't know what it is. You got sold a plant
You didn't know anything about it.
and
Yeah.
they didn't they didn't
Tell
tell
you
you anything.
Yeah,
That's
Like
sad.
they sold you a Lubersonii,
Yeah.
they probably should have warned you, or any number of things that happen. Certain nurseries, certain growers, you could have a rust fungus all over a whole grow of just monsteras. And if you're not training your eye to look for this stuff at a distance, it's going to be really hard for you to pick that out. And then once you get on the internet, it's going to be even harder for you to find the information that you're looking for.
Yeah.
And number one that I get here a lot is root rot. My God, if I had a nickel for every time I've experienced root rot in this greenhouse, I'd have $3. It does not happen.
Yeah.
It's so rare, but go on the internet, and the first thing you're going to find from any number of sources is going to say, well, you need to repot that plant because it's clearly got root rot.
Right.
You have no idea. It's the same with, I call it the I love her crowd. You don't love her, you just met her.
Yeah.
You do not know her, okay?
Cultivators, I'm telling
Yeah.
you, you should have been prepared for Garen. Like,
And
this is...
don't pick a plant because it's got a bunch of pink in it. Don't.
Why not? I love pink.
I understand, and there's a level over time, and this does happen to people where they
Okay.
come in the first time, and I might trust them, but I don't trust them enough for an anthurium hookery eye or something like
yeah.
I don't trust myself
I don't
with
trust
Okay.
myself with the
I would never trust
that. And I'll tell you, maybe over a year.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
everybody grows differently as well,
Yeah,
and
the
so
learning
that's
curve and all that
yes,
stuff,
exactly,
too.
and that's what we do better than pretty much everybody else is we level up with you.
Yeah.
So I don't know how many times Stephen and I have had the same exact conversation where it's, I want to do this, and I'm like, no,
Yeah.
I think you're better just doing what you're doing right
Yeah.
now.
Yeah.
But you've still got to be able to have those hard conversations. And really, it's not a hard conversation. It's harder to convince people because the way that we take in media, the way that we take in information so quickly, and there's so many people that are these voices of expert.
Yeah.
And is it? We don't know. Here,
There's a lot of fake news out there.
Yeah.
misinformation
Especially with
all the
plants.
time.
Fake
Here's
news.
the thing. This,
Yeah.
this leads me to this question. I mean, do you find social media influencers helpful
Or harmful?
when it
It-
comes to,
So it's a mixed bag. It's just like everything else on the planet, okay? Like anything else. It doesn't really matter what it is. There are going to be people that are 100% going to be pushing forward. Sydney Plant Guy is a good idea here, right? Like this
Okay.
guy shows up to the scene really early, showed people how to build massive moss bowls.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You need that for sure. You need someone doing that. If you're talking to somebody and they're just talking about repotting plants, and this is the type of soil mix that they use, but there's nothing to show like, okay, well, what did that soil mix do for you?
Right.
I can talk all day about what it could.
But show the value
Yeah.
Right.
too.
Yes.
Right.
And so we do need to remember that, and am I pot calling the kettle black? I literally sell this stuff for a living.
Yeah.
There's like, so I understand, but there are going to be people out there that are trying to sell you something.
Yeah.
You don't always need a humidifier. Okay? You don't need
Are you sure? I need a human.
yeah, and you may. But will that humidifier actually work in the space that you're using
Yes,
it
that's
in?
right.
Because people think buying a humidifier
Fixes everything. It just
yes,
increases the
but
humidity.
you live in a brick home, you've got carpet, you got
Right.
stuff like this, and all that moisture is it's a waste of time. So you get to that point that you'll need a cabinet to eventually achieve that goal.
Yeah.
Ooh.
Yeah.
But
Hold on. I want your opinion on cabinets.
It
'Cause,
depends. It depends.
Okay, so backstory. Garen is not always. I'm going to speak for you.
Yeah,
You're
I
not always
know what
about
you're
the
going to say,
trendy.
and you're right.
So
You're right.
So in terms of like cabinets, how do you feel about these cabinets? Because I mean, I'm not gonna lie, Steven's about to get one. I'm gonna
Sure.
get one, and Janae has one.
Yeah, and I actually thought about getting me one this year for some of my
Y'all.
smaller stuff.
Just
okay.
right.
But we got to remember, like, these plants are going to grow.
Yeah.
So
They're gonna have to come out the cabinet.
correct.
Yeah, you
And
can do that.
these small pots will not last for forever.
Yeah.
So some of these plants are going to outgrow cabinets. Now, if you've got a Hoya collection, that's all you got. Well, you got 10 or 15 years.
Yeah.
You won't have to worry about anything.
Yeah.
But like right now, highly trendy plants like anthuriums, that's the new hotness, right? We
Yeah.
see these all the time. You go out and you buy a dock block Michelle from any number of hardware store, and then
I got mine at Home Depot. I'm not gonna
next
lie.
thing you know, yeah, I'm calling them out, yeah. And so you're by that plant. Well, if that plant is established, that thing is going to take off on you.
Yeah.
Yes.
And you're going to run out of room. The other problem that you can have with cabinets is if you are not already knowledgeable about pest issues and how this stuff works, you can cause an Armageddon. So like, let's say,
in the
oh,
county.
in a matter
into
of
your space.
weeks.
Yeah.
So let's say you are brand new, you find a Mills bow on sale on Marketplace or
Dang,
a
you know
plant
about the
group.
Mills bow.
Yeah. And so you get one of those, and then you start collecting alocasias and colocacias, and you've never seen a spider mite in your life.
Yeah.
Well, by the time you figure out that that's what's going on, and you got to get lucky that you find someone like me that can just look at a picture and be like, oh yeah, it's spider mites, drinking the chlorophyll out of the leaves, and just give it to you. Are they easy to take care of? Sure, but they can decimate whole collections in days, less than a week. It doesn't take any amount of time. So you do have to be careful whenever, especially if you're new. Yeah. Now, if you've got this years of back, you know what these pests look like, you know how to do this, that is definitely something that you can move into, especially once again, smaller plants. But you're never going to be able to put most of your philodendrons in there. No syngonium's going to make it through there. So you're limiting yourself again to your plant choices and what you can grow. And we talk about this all the time here. Like, I don't know how many times we've talked about aglaonemas.
Yes.
We love that.
And it's one of my favorite plants. And people come in all the time and are like, well, and I'm like, listen,
that's
said
what you need.
You wanted a colored plant,
that doesn't,
and you got no light.
Right.
This is your option. This is your only option. And really, these red varietals are new. Basically, 2019 was when Siam was one of the only varieties that you could get. Now they're out there. You'll get a dazzling gem and a sparkling Sarah. Well, that's the same plant.
Yeah.
A pink Valentine, a red Valentine,
Same
a pink
plant.
Dalmatian. They start to go out. But this is a perfect example.
I thought I was the only one who just thought that they were coming up with names just to come up with new names.
No,
The same damn
no,
plant.
they have different hybrids and whatnot.
I get that
Well,
part.
but Stephen's not wrong here. There are times that capitalism reigns supreme, and they will change names. So Ahoya carnosa all of a sudden is going to be a Crimson Queen.
Right.
Ahoya exotica went from exotica to a Crimson Princess, and that was the year
Oh my
of
gosh, I learned some.
the
know.
princess,
I'm
the
confused.
queen,
I was confused.
all those things. That was a year, and then the next year it was very like cisgender male masculine driven. So all of a sudden we see
King.
swords,
Yeah.
Zulu,
Yeah.
dragon. Everything was a dragon.
Monster.
Yeah.
Yes. And so they start to figure that out. When I first started here, there's a plant called an alocasia boa. This is just a dwarf variety alocasia, not unique or rare by any stretch of the word. A customer came in, they bought one at Costco, and they said, look, I bought an alocasia Tyrian. And
Alocasia Tyrian.
and I just kind of like had to look at this.
From Game of Thrones.
Game of Thrones.
Yeah.
Because it's a dwarf varietal.
Oh my God.
And that's when I was like, okay, that's 2019. That I was like, oh, we're
doing this now.
Wow.
got it. And so growers 100%, this has happened to us before. That the hybrid ag that I have, that's a green cup, right? They sold that to me as a hybrid. That was the name that they sold it to me. It took you coming to me and
It's that's a green bowl.
green bowl. And so even me, like I literally just ordered dazzling gem and sparkling Sarahs because I thought they were different plants.
They're not. They're the
So
same.
now, luckily, I bought them in 6s and 5s. I'm talking about the size of the grow pot
So you
there.
can get rid of them.
I can definitely use these, yeah.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, that's not what I wanted to do. So it happens to me as well. And when I'm ordering plants, you're talking about 25 feet on a 50-foot trailer, and there's 5 people on that truck. So we're getting half of a truck, and 4 other people are getting the other half.
Wow.
And we'll actually basically sell some of our space to help out other plant shops in the area, namely Tropical Greenery, who are just like really good friends of ours. They're Gary and them over there, sweetest people in Fort Worth. And so they're one that we work, and that's part of this is a very tight group.
Yeah.
And when you're looking at the people that have been doing plants, I mean, this is the 70s is really when this stuff started to take off. So the new group that's coming in really has no idea that that's something that's even been going on.
Well, and I was gonna ask, Garen, as far as that. So obviously we live in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, and it's a very competitive market.
Yes.
And then on top of it being competitive, because we have a lot of shops and whatnot, there's a lot of posts on social media where a lot of brick and mortar stores are closing down, some of these main ones that are just all over the country. Can you describe like maybe the challenges of managing a nursery? How do you guys continue to stay in business? Kind of talk us through that, right?
Yeah.
'Cause, that's something that I would think the cultivators would want to know, because all people know is I go to a plant store, I'm going to buy this plant, and that is it. But just the challenges, because there's a lot of stores shutting down.
Yeah, and you can do this for long enough, okay?
Okay.
That's what I say all the time, is that you can get away for a couple of years before it's going to cross over and you're going to have a hard time. We've got to remember a couple of different things are going on here. We're very lucky in the sense this business is 52 years old.
Love
and
it.
that the original owner is 75, and he has been doing it since he got out of the NFL when he was 24 years old. So luckily for me, just in my learning curve experience, I've got someone that I can go back to and ask, hey, have you ever brought in mahoganies? He goes, oh yeah, I brought them back in the 80s. They do okay. Or what's the problem with this style of plant? What have you run into? So we're blessed with that fact. We're blessed with
That experience.
Oh, yes,
Yeah.
the experience, the amount of room that I have. The reason we're called plant keepers is because we're not plant sellers necessarily. The whole objective is to make more money off this stuff by growing it. So I over order,
Wow,
but
okay.
you got to remember smaller plant shops don't have that ability. It's a turnover process. The other thing that's going on that most people, and I give this description a lot because people do come in here and they want to know. They ask me, how does this work? Now, they're all commodity based, so prices fluctuate greatly. Perfect example is a few years ago, Escalitos, okay? You could buy
You
an
love your muskets,
yeah.
Escalitos. Yeah.
Escalito on Friday was $115, and by Sunday it was $37.50. Okay, why? Because the market got inflated and saturated, right? So all of a sudden, that plant that was worth that is no longer worth that because everyone's got one. So the other problem that's facing, especially smaller plant shops, is when I buy so many plants on a truck. This is a semi truck. I have got a dock.
Yeah.
And I can unload on that dock, and that costs me nothing.
Yeah.
The other thing that's going on is I'm ordering directly from growers. So when I'm doing an order, no less than 5 growers. I have looked all the way up to 13 individual growers to find all the things that I need. Now, we're different. You got to remember, I need boring 10-inch snake plants. I need a lot of boring stuff for our corporate commercial.
So that they are.
Yeah, for our replacements
Yeah.
and for us to do that style of business. But
Right.
once again, if you don't have that money in place, you're throwing money away. So unfortunately, smaller plant shops are having to pay to unload their plants because they don't have a dock. The other thing that you're usually going to see from smaller plant shops is that they have got to work through a brokerage. So
Yeah.
a brokerage is saying, okay, tell me what you want, and then I'll go find them. So you're overpaying for a lot of plants. You're paying a brokerage fee. You're probably paying a stop fee, which can run anywhere between $30 and $50.
So there's a lot of middle people in
Oh,
between
100%.
And their profit margin is probably tiny.
reducing.
Yes, and so
Do you feel like that's what's happened to some of these
Oh,
plant
100%,
shops, these brick and
100%.
mortars?
the other thing that happens is, yes, we've got all these plants, so we can draw in customers worldwide. Essentially, there are people that are moving to Dallas left and right. I mean, the city is one of the fastest growing cities in America, so we've got a 15-foot Madagascar palm tree. Okay, so just by having something like that, okay, well, maybe I can sell that for, I don't know what it's worth. We don't know what it's worth. But if you're a smaller plant shop and you're not able to bring in a draw, you're going to only be able to sell to your customer base that plant one time unless they kill it. Customers way less likely to come back to a plant shop after they kill something, especially if they're new. And what ends up happening is a funny little paradox where they actually blame us.
I was about to ask.
Yeah, it happens all the time. People are like, you sold me that, and I'm like, nope. And I will walk you around and we'll point at every single one of mine, and I'll be like, oh, well, that looks perfect, doesn't it? So you got to remember that you're going to run out of customer base, and you can only sell. So now you're under multiple pressure points here. You not only are trying to make sure that you've got new stuff for those customers, which not every customer is going to want that ad. Not every customer
Y'all
is going to
need
want
this.
this thing. So you're not going to be able to sell every plant to every customer. And in our case, it's mostly size, and then we tell the truth. But for a smaller plant shop, you're going to run into a point where after a couple of years, if you don't have them building new apartments, if you drive up and listen, guys, if you drive up and down Beckley Avenue across from Oak Cliff Mirror and Glass, you can see 10-story apartment complexes that used to be 1-story garages.
They're just growing, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So yes, we don't even have to do anything. We're literally just here waiting for them to come to us.
Yeah.
But if you're not in an area where
That's being redeveloped or developed.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
And I mean, one of the best examples of a plant shop like really doing an excellent job in this respect is famous in Oregon and Prosper.
Okay, yeah, we were just talking about them.
But
Yeah.
they work
Canada
their
Plant.
asses off,
Yeah.
right? They have to. Now, they did open up in a place where there's a giant, gap inside of that plant sales arena. But at the end of the day, if you're not getting a whole bunch of people moving to this community, you're going to run into problems. And that's why they do shipping and stuff like that. Because we don't ship out. I mean, if I do, it's super rare. I don't like the weather effects.
Yeah.
And then we just cater to such a larger style.
Yeah.
So,
Well, you mentioned something about customers, right? Customers coming back and showing you, hey, you sold me this plant didn't make it at my house. This is your fault. What are some of the mistakes that you see customers, even like me, make more frequently than not?
overwatering. I mean, 100%. Overwatering is the number
Too
one
much
thing.
love
You
for
and
the
I
plant.
are the overwaters. We underwaters,
Okay.
full dry.
Yeah, and you should always try to underwater.
Before you overwater?
Yeah. The other thing that we see a lot of times is, I'm sure all of y'all know this, and most of the people that are watching are going to know this, but we tell people not to take anything out of the grow pot.
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah, you told
that
me.
is
Yeah.
such a
We need to
good
talk
idea.
about
Like this is a grower pot, y'all.
Yes.
Right here, you can stick it into.
And if
a
you show
catch
the
pot.
bottom of this pot, there's probably 9-10 holes on the bottom of it.
Yeah, great.
There's
Mm-hmm.
a whole bunch of holes. So number one thing is repotting a plant with a bunch of drainage into a pot with no drainage.
with like one.
With the one
What?
hole. And
Yeah.
a couple different things happen there. One, usually the pot's too big. So you're trying to keep it as close as possible. Tropical plants like to be tight. That's,
Root bound is better.
100%. They use a process called root flare, which is completely different from like a pecan tree or a live oak, which uses like a tap root or anchor
Yeah.
root.
Yeah.
So a big plant is in a small pot when it comes to tropicals. The bigger pot that you put it in is not going to make that plant grow any faster. A couple different reasons. One, you just told it to grow roots and not plant. Two, how much dirt did you want to water that day? And then finally,
I'm just learning so much, y'all.
Yeah.
well, you don't
Today.
normally do
true.
this, but if you did and you showed me a picture, I would tell you to your face, well, you know what you did here.
Yeah.
And it's nothing, there's nothing wrong with repotting your plants. It's more about this drainage being important. And so that actually is going to flow into what I'm sure y'all were probably going to ask me about, my favorite love of mediums. So
Yes, I was gonna ask that.
I love Leca.
There-
How do you feel about semi-hydro?
Hydro.
So it's not a
Lechuza.
problem necessarily as long as you've got drainage, but you've got to remember, let's say we're using a chunky mix, okay? You're upping your level of control and that responsibility pretty high because this plant is drying out
Fast.
way more
Yeah.
frequently. Yeah.
Yeah.
And, same with clear grow pots. Not every plant needs to be in these clear grow pots. I understand that you like to see the
So
roots.
trendy. We have to see the roots.
But over time, it's probably not going to end up working out.
Well,
The plant itself is going to start having effects because it was never supposed to get light on those
on the
roots.
roof. That's why
See?
it's supposed to be under the dirt.
Yeah.
Where they get no
Now,
light.
once again, this is kind of plant specific.
Right.
Yeah.
But the main thing that I, like when we had talked about doing this, that I wanted to impart is that if you are going to do a chunky soil mix, you have got to be prepared just like the cabinet. You've got to be ready. You've got to know what these problems look like so you can remedy them. Because the reason we wouldn't do a chunky soil mix here is one, thousands of plants. These things, I mean, that plant I got to water 2 or 3 times a week. And
Really?
people-
An aglaonema?
An aglaonema,
Well, yeah,
because the
I've seen
pot
that-
size.
yeah.
Yeah. So if I put that in a chunky mix, well, I might as well leave it in water.
Yeah.
But we've got too many plants for that. Now, that being said, giant palm trees, giant trees like that, we've definitely got in saucers because during the summer, I will,
you
oh
can't-
my God. And it's the same with like foliage or terrarium foliage. People are like, oh, when are you going to carry? No, they won't make it. Same with air plants. First year I was here, we bought 300 air plants from the Tropical Plant Expo. I had to mist those plants.
Often.
Oh, 5 times
That's
a day.
frustrating.
And people will be like, "We'll just soak them," and I was like, "Do you realize how many I have?"
Garen
Not that
has
ezy.
a lot of plants at Plant Keeper for
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah.
Oh, and while we're on, just the topic, this is why I love talking to Garen, because we didn't even need to be on a podcast. This is literally the kind of conversations we have with
All the
Garen.
time.
Yeah, they've got a script here, but I just looked over it, so I knew
So
I
he
could
kinda
just
knows
do
ya.
it for them.
So here's the
it
thing,
out.
Garen, right? So obviously, Cultivation Corner, we're thankful that you are allowing us to have a space where we can plant influence or be influencers per se. My question for you is, what are your opinions about like plant influencers? What is a plant influencer in your opinion, whether it's the content they create or the way they present themselves on social media? Because I know you have lots of opinions. Please
Well,
share.
and once again, I would break this up into two different types,
Okay.
at least two different types, right?
Hopefully we don't fall into the other type that
No,
you're about
no,
to
no.
Okay.
roast.
You wouldn't
Please
be
roast.
here.
I want you to roast.
You wouldn't be here if I didn't want you here. That's end all. be
Yeah,
all.
and be all. You'd be
and-
on red.
And I don't know how many people have tried to do this.
Yeah.
And honestly, the
Oh, Gary,
Oh, well, thank
yeah,
you.
yeah.
Aw.
like, but once again, if I don't know you, and you're walking in here the first time, and you're like, "Well, I just want to shoot a video real quick," no, or it's going to cost you this
Whatever.
much.
Yeah.
You know, one thing I ended up finding was a couple of years back that I did, like, an influencer came in, not a plant influencer. This is a lifestyle clothing type of person. Well, she videoed me telling her how to take care of her plant, posted that on her Instagram, and the DMs went insane with people in her brand wanting to collab with me. Well, these people don't match my brand.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the type of
Everybody's
plant influencer I'm looking for is going to be the type of plant influencer that wants to teach people, that wants to show what's going on. Now that could be you tour. You go all over the world and you go to different places where you show plants.
Yep, in their natural habitat.
Yes,
Yeah.
yeah. And it could be someone that is teaching, like specifically, hey, here's how I cut back this and grow that.
Yeah.
But there is that subset of group that is doing it for the clout, that is doing it because it's easy, because it's trendy. And if you have the monetary means, guys, they don't have to take care of a plant. They can
Yeah.
buy 2 or 3, kill one for their video, and then show you this other
Yeah,
nice
I know.
one.
Yeah, that I've
I've
noticed
seen
that
that.
too.
I'm pretty positive that's happened to me before.
Yep.
And a lot of times I've noticed it with like notching fiddle leaves and stuff
Yeah.
like that,
Yeah.
where it's like, oh, look, in
Yeah.
3 months,
Right. Yeah.
and ain't no way, ain't no way, in 3 months that's what you were
Lies.
able to grow it
I
into.
because I
Deceit.
felt like really, really bad at one point because I'm like, well, how come I can't do that? Because
Right.
it can't be done.
Right,
Yeah.
it's a tricky,
Yeah.
tricky scenario.
Yeah.
So there are influencers that are going to be good for this, and there's going to be influencers just like plant shops that are going to fizzle out
Yeah.
because you're going to get to a level that you know that they're full of it, and you're
Yeah.
going to say, "Oh, why did they say that?" And another thing that I say about influencers all the time is if someone tells you 100% and it has to deal with a plant, do not trust that person. If they're
Wow.
like, no,
Never 100%.
truth.
no,
Yeah.
it's almost impossible.
Well,
Plants
it's always
are
a gray
different.
area,
Yes.
right? It's a gray area.
So if someone tells you that oats, which I don't know why you'd put a bio product like that in your soil mix unless you just wanted
What, oats? Like
Oats?
oatmeal?
literally oat.
What?
Yes, this was a
Wow.
TikTok video I saw. I
Are
don't
you
even-
kidding?
Yeah, no,
Does,
it's not a joke.
does the Agla Lima have like high cholesterol? Where they
Right.
Oats?
You know, grandma breakfast.
Okay.
and that gentleman seriously was like, "This will stop any type of root shock that you get." No,
That's ridiculous.
No. Save it. And so I've brought in trays of Hoyas, you know, just like a Burtney or Rosita or something like that, and they all do good except for one. And so I'll limp that one along for a long time, and then finally one day it'll die. Now maybe it wasn't rooted in, maybe there was transplant shock from the grower, maybe it didn't like being stuck in a truck for 3 or 4 days and
Yeah.
overwatered. Honestly, I can't tell you the answer to that. No one's going to know the answer to that probably. Things are just going to happen. So it's never a 100%. So anybody that is just saying short of drainage, okay? And I'd like to point out that if you know what you're doing enough, you can put a snake plant in a pot with no drainage. You can grow stuff with no drainage.
Wow.
But you're going to have to stay on top of it.
Yeah.
And so that goes back to learning all the basics, what I call the pyramid. We want to build a base so your pyramid doesn't fall. If we build that base of knowledge, by the time you get to the top of your pyramid, you can look down and identify and go, oh, that's an Echeveria. That's a Calacho. Just things that look all the same. And then that's when you start getting into that next level of like being able to identify these plants.
Oh my God, you guys, what happened? Did it just go black?
It did.
Oh
What
my-
happened,
What was he about to
Steven,
say?
y'all?
I can't take it. I can't take it. Okay, look, we'll fix these things on the back end because technology can be a trip sometimes. But I promise you, we'll get Garen back if you tune in next week.
Let's
Next
go.
on Cultivation Corner.
Learning curve here is ridiculous.
Yeah.
Standard plant person, I say 3 years, is about the time that it takes for you to realize how the earth rotates and that, once a year, the sun trajectory is going to change drastically. Water quality issues, what does that look like? What